Labor lost the unlosable election in May in large part because workers in Queensland walked away from the so-called Workers' Party. And mostly it seems because of Labor's mad global warming obsession, a real upper middle class kind of thing. Today, new Labor leader Anthony Albanese gave his first big speech in his 6 months in the job, which we were told was going to help get workers to trust Labor again. But I'm not so sure that it did. For one, Albanese stuck to Labor's global warming program.
The fact is the world is decarbonising. With the right planning and vision, Australia can not only continue to be an energy export superpower, we can also enjoy a new manufacturing boom. This means jobs. Consider the direct exports of LNG.
I should remind Albanese the world is not actually decarbonising, because even now renewables supply just 5% of the world's energy, 5%. And coal still supplies 38% of the world's electricity. And add gas to that, LNG, which is actually a fossil fuel, by the way, Mr Albanese. And then there was this nonsense.
We don't need to create nuclear power when every day we can harness the power of the greatest nuclear reactor in the solar system that we see right outside here. It's called the sun. We also have some of the best wind and wave resources.
Again, from where are we going to get our electricity when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? And as for wave generators, just south of where Albanese spoke in Perth is what's left of the wave generator off Albany, the latest wave generation project in Australia to collapse. Everyone has failed. Well, joining me is the panel, Liberal Senator James Paterson, and making his way to the chair, a former Labor Minister and our Sky News host, Graham Richardson. We'll come to him when he's in the chair. Albanese's speech, try and tell me what was good about it.
That's a very hard question to charitably answer,
well,
Andrew.
Let me give you something that some papers have claimed. That was him saying there's going to make a big push to get more protections for workers in the gig economy, you know, like Uber drivers and things.
Yeah, that sounds to me like new regulation of the gig economy, which will completely stifle it. I mean, the really only substantive policy idea in Anthony Albanese's speech today was for a new bureaucracy. Now, I'm not sure that's going to create the jobs of the future, a new government department, but that's what Anthony Albanese was proposing today.
That at least coal is good because it can be used to build more wind farms. I mean, really?
Well, I mean, that's better than what we've heard from Labor leaders in recent years, so I guess that's an improvement, Andrew.
I think it's going to sell to the workers. I mean, I'm all for helping Labor connect with workers if it's really seriously going to represent workers, but that ain't it.
And that's the thing, Andrew. This speech was really platitudes about how Anthony Albanese and Labor supports jobs. Well, no Labor leader would ever say that they don't support jobs, but what he didn't do is walk away from the policies that they took to last election, which are anti-jobs, whether it's on emissions reduction or taxation. Fundamentally, they had an anti-jobs agenda, and he hasn't changed that at all.
But listen, you guys are also having disagreements. What do you make of Resources Minister Matt CANAVAN? He's just said he's guilty as charged. So, he's guilty as charged. He did, in fact, have a huge fight with Prime Minister Scott Morrison, where he was heard yelling, "This is effed," you know, expletive not deleted in his case. He's apparently angry, like several other Nationals MPs, that Morrison is on a go slow. Your leader's on a go slow on this feasibility study for a coal-fired power generator in Queensland that the Nats are really keen on. Where do you stand on this?
I wish I could say it was out of character for Matt, but reading that article this morning, I did laugh to myself and say, yeah, that sounds like Matt. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I respect and value him as a colleague. He fights hard for the people that he represents, particularly... Well, I mean, and maybe I wouldn't advocate doing that, Andrew, but Matt is really passionate, particularly about North and Central Queensland.
Where do you stand on this generator?
Well, I'm someone who is sceptical about government support for energy, taxpayer support for energy. I'd rather they stand on their own too.
I think he's worried about talking about coal.
Well, you asked me where I stand. I think I have a principled position that as far as possible, government should be getting out of the energy business, not into the energy business. And I want to see fewer taxpayer dollars being spent, not less. And that's across the board, Andrew, whether it's renewables or coal or any other form of energy. I'd like to see them stand on their own 2 feet.
You still didn't quite answer the question, but anyway. Graham Richardson, thank you so much for joining us, mate. Really appreciate it. Just want to go back to Albo's speech. It was meant, as I said at the start, to sort of reconnect Labor to the workers that are lost in the last election. How do you think he did?
I think he did pretty well. I mean, I think he did a lot better than than Kim Carr did on the front page of the paper today. So it was a big improvement on that, I thought.
Bar. Yeah, but what made you a supporter of it?
Well, I think what you're looking at here is just an attitude. And what I want to see from the Labor Party is the Labor Party looking back to its base and making sure that it doesn't become simply a party of clever hirelings who aren't ever going to be of the base or understand it. I much prefer to think that we can get some people from it. And we've stopped doing that for too long, Andrew. I think way too long. And I think what Albo wants to do is redirect us back to where we came from. And I think that's a good thing. Not in terms of going backwards on policy, but in terms of who do you look after? What's your primary purpose? Why are you in government? They're the questions that Anthony wants to answer. And I think it's a long time since a Labor leader really took the trouble to do that.
Yeah, but Graham, I'm still disturbed by the fact that he's still trying to sell the workers global warming, although obviously heavy industry, like smelters and things, they're the first to go. In fact, the smelters are already thinking about pulling out of the country. He's still trying to sell them global warming rather than rework Labor's passion for this, new religion.
Well, I think this new religion is spreading, whether we like that or not, it's a fact, because it seems that I know that he's already religious, but Scott Morrison seems to be picking it up a fair bit. He's talking up climate change and what he's doing about it. And I think as long as you find the Liberal Party adopting it, hardly likely, therefore, the Labor Party will walk away. It means that they have to embrace it even more closely. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but that's how it's working. I mean, Morrison, I think, has surprised Labor by walking down that path. I think he surprised a lot of his colleagues as well.
Where are you on this global warming position of the government? You know, all these targets and all that, no winding them back, and stop pulling faces like this is a real tough one.
I'm not pulling any faces at all, Andrew. I think the contrast couldn't be clearer between the government and the opposition on this. I mean, I want to pay tribute.
What about your position? Because see, this is what gets me. The Liberals say our position at least is not as bad as Labor. That does not make it a good position.
Well, I think it's objectively a defensible position, Andrew. It's the targets that we've set are very measured, they are very achievable. It's not really feasible in this day and age for Australia to say we're going to be the only country in the world that does nothing on this, but nor should we be the only country in the world saying we're going to destroy our economy to achieve economic nirvana or environmental nirvana by going ahead of the world. So I think the reality is there's just an expectation that countries make a contribution, and the only question is what's a reasonable contribution to make, and I think we've fallen in the right place.